Somewhere in the ruins of an ancient city, a gate lay burned to ash. A wall, once mighty, now lay scattered in the dust, stone by stone by stone. And in a palace, hundreds of miles away, a man got the news. His people were living in disgrace. His city was defenseless. Everything that once stood strong was rubble. This is not just an ancient story. This is a leadership story, a faith story, a story about what happens when broken people decide to build again. Today we're going back more than 2,000 years to a man named Nehemiah, and we're going to pull out lessons that belong in boardrooms, in break rooms, and in your own quiet moments of doubt. Because what happened at that wall will change how you lead your team and how you trust your God. Let's begin. He was not a builder. He wasn't a general. He wasn't even living in Jerusalem. He held a respected position, serving in the court of a foreign king, far from home, comfortable, secure. But then his brother arrived with a report, and it wasn't good. The wall of Jerusalem, he said, was broken down. The gates had been burned. The people who remained were living in shame, exposed to every threat around them. For most people, that news would end there. A sad shake of the head. And life goes on, but Nehemiah didn't just hear a report, he felt it. Sometimes the first step toward any great work isn't a strategy. It's simply refusing to look away from a problem everyone else has learned to ignore. In every organization there is a broken wall, a process no one wants to fix, a culture no one wants to confront, a team that's been neglected so long, people assume it's just how things are. Teaches us this: leadership often begins the moment you stop accepting that's just how it is. Here's what he did next, and it's the part most leadership books skip. He sat down, he wept, he mourned for days, and then he fasted and he prayed. Before ever picked up a tool, drew a plan, or spoke to a king, he went to God first. This is the moment that separates this story from every ordinary turnaround plan. He didn't rely on his own confidence. He didn't rely on his position in the palace. He brought his broken heart to a God he trusted completely. There's a lesson here for every one of us, whether we lead a team of 2 or 2,000. Before strategy comes surrender. Before the plan comes the posture of humility. Grace doesn't ask us to pretend we're not overwhelmed. Grace meets us exactly in the place where we finally admit we cannot do this alone. And that's exactly where story truly begins. Not with his ability, but with his faith. Weeks later, the king noticed something was wrong. His face betrayed his sorrow, and in that single moment, a servant standing before one of the most powerful rulers on earth had to make a choice. He could stay silent, safe, comfortable, or he could ask for something enormous. Permission to leave, resources to rebuild, protection for the journey. Asked, and he received far more than he expected. Here's what's remarkable. Didn't walk in with a business plan finalized down to the letter. He walked in prepared, but he also walked in trusting that God would move the heart of a king who owed him nothing. That is the tension every person of faith learns to hold. Prepare fully, then trust fully. In corporate life, we call this having the courage to make the ask. In faith, we call it walking through the door God opens, even when the door looks impossible. Got the resources, the timeline, and the authority he needed. Not because he demanded it, but because grace moved ahead of him and prepared the answer before he even asked the question. When Nehemiah finally arrived in Jerusalem, he didn't call a meeting first. He went out at night, quietly, and inspected the damage himself, stone by stone, gate by gate. He walked the entire perimeter before he said a single word to the people he was about to lead. This is a masterclass in leadership most managers never learn. Understand the real problem before you propose the solution. Too many leaders walk into a broken situation and immediately start assigning blame or announcing changes. Nehemiah studied first. He listened to the damage before he spoke to the people. Only after that quiet, humble assessment did he gather the leaders and say the words that would change everything. Let us rise up and build. And notice what happened next. The people didn't respond to a title. They responded to a man who had clearly done his homework, who had prayed before he planned, and who believed, genuinely believed, that rebuilding was possible. Vision, backed by preparation, is what turns a hopeless group into a determined team. As the work began, so did the resistance. Rival leaders mocked the effort, calling it a joke that would collapse under its own weight. Then the mockery turned to threats. Word came that enemies were planning an armed attack to stop the rebuild entirely. Most teams would have stopped there. Nehemiah didn't. He organized guards. He stationed families by clan at the most vulnerable points of the wall. And then came one of the most striking images in the entire story. The builders worked with one hand on their tools and the other hand ready on their weapons. Half the people worked, half the people stood watch. Nobody put down their armor, even while they worked. Here's the corporate lesson hiding in plain sight. Growth and protection aren't opposites. They happen at the same time. Every serious project you'll ever lead will face resistance. Competitors, budget cuts, doubters, saboteurs of morale. The teams that succeed aren't the ones who ignore the threats. They're the ones who build while staying alert. And here's the faith lesson underneath it all. Nehemiah wasn't naive about the danger. He didn't pretend the threats weren't real. He simply refused to let fear replace faith. He prepared for battle and kept building anyway. That is trusting God in its most practical form, continuing the work even while carrying real fear, because you believe the outcome is still in bigger hands than your own. When threats and mockery didn't work, the opposition changed tactics. They invited Nehemiah to a meeting, then another, then another. 4 separate times they tried to lure him away from the work, under the appearance of diplomacy. Nehemiah's answer became legendary. "I am doing a great work and I cannot come down." He recognized the trap for what it was. Not every invitation deserves your time. Not every urgent request is actually important. In corporate life, we live inside this trap every single day. Endless meetings, constant pings, quick calls that eat entire afternoons. Most of them are not evil plots, but they still pull us away from the one thing that actually matters. Nehemiah protected his focus like it was sacred, because it was. He had a calling, he had a deadline, he had a team depending on him. And in faith terms, this is discernment, the wisdom to recognize when something that looks reasonable is actually designed to derail you from what God has called you to finish. Against every expectation, the wall was finished, not in years, not in months. 52 days, a project that skeptics said was impossible, was completed by ordinary people Bakers, goldsmiths, priests' families, most of whom had never built anything like this in their lives. What made the difference? Unity. Everyone worked on the section nearest their own home, giving them personal ownership of the outcome. Clear leadership. Nehemiah organized, protected, and encouraged the people at every stage. And underneath it all, an unshaken belief that this work mattered and that God was in it. In business, we talk endlessly about efficiency, synergy, alignment. Nehemiah's team didn't have consultants or software. They had a shared purpose, clear roles, and a leader who worked right alongside them. That combination is still, to this day, the fastest way to accomplish something the world calls impossible. When the wall was finally finished, something unexpected happened. Even the enemies who had mocked, threatened, and schemed against the project fell silent. The text tells us they recognized that this work had been done with the help of God. Think about that. The finished wall didn't just protect a city, it became a testimony, visible proof, standing in stone, that something greater than human effort had been at work. This is perhaps the deepest lesson in the entire story. Excellence, done with integrity, humility, and faith, doesn't just accomplish a goal, it becomes a witness. Your work, done well, done with grace, done with faith intact through the pressure, can speak louder than any speech you'll ever give your team. People may not remember your quarterly targets, but they will remember how you led when everything was falling apart, and how you kept trusting when trust made no logical sense. Let's bring this all the way home. Every leader, every team, every one of us is standing in front of some kind of broken wall, a stalled project, a struggling team, a dream that feels like rubble. From Nehemiah, we learn to feel the weight of the problem honestly, instead of pretending it doesn't exist. We learn to bring our grief and our plans to God first, before we bring them to anyone else. We learn to prepare fully, then trust boldly when the door of opportunity finally opens. We learn to study the real damage before proposing quick fixes. We learn that real progress requires building with one hand, while staying alert with the other. We learn to guard our focus fiercely against distractions dressed up as urgent matters. We learn that unity and shared purpose can accomplish in weeks what fear said would take years. And above everything else, we learn that faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is choosing to keep building, even while afraid, because you trust the one who called you to build in the first place. That is the story of Nehemiah, a broken wall, a humble man, an impossible deadline, and a God who is present through every single stone. So, here's the question worth sitting with today. What's your broken wall? Is it a team that's lost its confidence, a goal you stopped believing was possible, a season where you've been carrying the weight quietly, wondering if anyone even notices? Nehemiah's story reminds us it can be rebuilt, not always quickly, not always easily, but with honest assessment, humble prayer, courageous action, and unshakable faith. Walls that look permanently broken can rise again. If this story moved you, encouraged you, or gave you something to bring into your workplace this week, share it with someone on your team who needs it, and like, share, and subscribe this video to inspire others. And remember, whatever wall you're facing right now, you don't have to build it alone. Thank you for watching.